I want to hear cannons. Downfield, pull up, ball to the 5, touchdown Tampa Bay. Mike Evans does it again. Fire the cannons, Bucs.
It's first and goal. That's picked up. That's picked off. And who else? Lavonte David. And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers may ride to the Super Bowl with that one.
Third down, 18. Dropping Gannon, looking Gannon. Those up with the head. Intercepted at the 40. Derek Brooks 30. Brooks to the 25. 20. Derek Brooks all the way. There it is. The dagger's in. We're going to win the Super Bowl. And then the cannons come. Fire them. Keep on firing them. Keep on firing them.
Jason Light strikes again as the Tampa Bay Buccaneers secure another big-name free agent and re-sign one of their own. Linebacker Lavonte David is returning for his 13th season with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He has agreed to a one-year deal with an $8.5 million base contract. A source told ESPN's Jeremy Fowler the contract has a max value of $10 million. Welcome back to a free agency update episode of the Cannon Fire Podcast. I'm your host, Rhett Matthew. No Evan Wanish this week, but wanted to give you a short show, just long enough to give you all the important information and try and keep you up to date on everything that has been going on this week. If you guys have not been up to speed, the Bucs have been busy since the start of the open negotiation period in NFL free agency. Here is the story, ESPN.com from Jenna Lane. Lavonte David becomes the third key player to return to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who previously re-signed star wide receiver Mike Evans and agreed to a new contract with starting quarterback Baker Mayfield. After his contract expired in 2022, David returned to the Bucs on a one-year deal worth $7 million. David led the team with 134 tackles, 17 tackles for loss. He had 4.5 sacks, a forced fumble, and 5 pass breakups. Lavonte David, at 34 years old, was the only player in the NFL last season with 100-plus tackles, 15-plus tackles for loss, and 3-plus sacks. Number 54, 17 tackles for loss are the second most in a single season by a player aged 33 or older since the stat was first tracked in 2008, behind only J.J. Watt's 18 in the 2022 season. David's 1,035 solo tackles are the most of any player in the NFL since 2012 and the 11th most since the NFL began tracking this metric in 1994. His 18 fumble recoveries are also the most in the NFL since 2012, while his 28 forced fumbles are fourth most. Now, this is a report, specifically the Lavonte David deal. This came out, I believe it was Ian Rapoport, or I guess Jordan Schultz, as it said in this here article. Jeremy Fowler, who broke the news, but I got it from Rap Sheet. I got it from Ian Rapoport. This was a report that seemingly had a lot of smoke the last couple of days. There was another report that came out, I think late last night or early this morning, that said the Bucs were actively working on a multi-year extension for Lavonte David. And I'm not going to say that that report was false, because it was partially true. It said the Bucs were working on a deal with Lavonte David. But we've been telling you guys on this show for weeks, almost a month now, that, well, two main things about Lavonte David. He's either going to be coming back to Tampa Bay or he's going to be retiring. And on top of that, we said that the most likely scenario for Lavonte David playing out the rest of his career in Tampa Bay is going to be on one-year deals. It's more than likely going to be a one-year deal. If he feels like coming back after that, they'll give him another one-year deal. If he feels like coming back after that, they give him another one-year deal. We weren't the only ones to report it, but think of it like, I've heard it compared to the Rondé Barber model. You know, Rondé Barber admitted that he signed a multi-year deal with the Bucs, and then his last 2 seasons were all one-year deals. So Lavonte David, at 34 years old, will be back with the team that drafted him. A second-round draft pick by the Bucs in 2012. David was named a team captain for 10 straight seasons. His 181 regular season games are second most in franchise history, behind Pro Football Hall of Famer Rondé Barber with 208, while his 11,863 defensive snaps are the most in franchise history. He is also the franchise leader in forced fumbles with 28 and fumble recoveries. Off the field, David's Lavonte David Foundation provides college scholarships and school supplies to students demonstrating financial need in Hillsborough and Miami-Dade counties. A lot of the same things that we said about Mike Evans could be said about Lavonte David, just on the defensive side of the ball. Not only is this a guy that I personally grew up watching play football for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but he's a guy that's good for your franchise. He's a leader by example. He just goes in and year out and plays his ass off. Like the guy is well over 30 years old, playing linebacker in the NFL, and I would argue he's still top 5 at the position across the entire league. He has not shown any signs of slowing down. He is the model of consistency, and he has been a focal point of this Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense for well over a decade, and another guy that I would love to see spend his entire career with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, maybe we can get into the Hall of Fame discussion here in a couple of minutes. Just a friendly reminder, the cut phone lines are on, 305-224-1968. The meeting ID for this show is 871-2452-8660. Not going to be the longest show today. Again, that's the nature of these emergency podcasts. They're never the longest, right? So we're going to get you everything you need to know, but if you do feel like calling in, you do have some time. Let's check out the live chat, see how everybody's doing, and we'll catch you up on some other moves the Bucs have made that we forgot to talk about when we did our show yesterday. Talked about the Bucs trading Carlton Davis, re-signing Chase McLaughlin to a 3-year deal, letting Russell Gage go. David Wash, oh yeah, Lavonte David is back. Now time for Jordan Whitehead. I said it on the show yesterday, and I'm going to say it again today. That's something I can co-sign with. Now, the money situation for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers is obviously going to be a big-time discussion. I think before this Lavonte David move, they had around $10.5 million. Don't quote me on that, but I believe that's what they had. They've also made a couple of extra moves to free up cap space. The recently departed Shaq Barrett just signed with the Dolphins today. Good for Shaq. But the money keeps getting brought up because I think a lot of people might, for some reason, I think a lot of people feel underwhelmed with what the Bucs have been able to do in free agency so far, but it cannot be understated how good a value they're getting on their own guys. Like Jason Light said at the Combine a couple of weeks ago, if he was able to re-sign Mike Evans, Baker Mayfield, Antoine Winfield Jr., Lavonte David, and I believe he mentioned Tristan Wirfs, Chase McLaughlin, he said we should throw another boat parade. And it's not because the Bucs are going to win the Super Bowl. It's because if you look at this free agency and you take off your red and pewter tinted glasses and you look at the needs the Bucs have addressed with the holes they were going to have in free agency, like if any other team in the NFL, and I think Evan Wanish has said this, if any other team in the NFL was able to sign Mike Evans, Lavonte David, Antoine Winfield Jr., potentially Tristan Wirfs, a kicker like Chase McLaughlin for 3 years, that's an A-plus free agency. And I'm not even biased saying that. Like I think the Bucs just have so many studs that were set to hit free agency that the way that they are re-signing these guys might feel anticlimactic to some. But these are players that you don't want them to go anywhere. And I think they are going to be huge features for this Buccaneers team next season. And we'll see how important they all are. So with the money, I don't think Jason Light wants to waste his time taking a gamble on an outside free agent. You look at a lot of the free agents that have paid off for the Bucs in the past, specifically Shaq Barrett. This is always going to be the go-to example. The Bucs gave him a 1-year deal. They paid him peanuts, and he got 19.5 sacks. A lot of the guys who come to Tampa Bay as free agents who stick around are seemingly picked up for peanuts. Like Jason Light thrives in value. You remember the deal that Leonard Fournette got before he ultimately got paid. You remember Antonio Brown had his own reputation, but he wasn't getting paid very much. The Bucs have had a lot of great value signings, and I think aside from re-signing their own guys, it's important to mention that Jason Light loves riding with value. He loves looking for those cheap free agents that could give you a pretty high output. And there's still a lot of guys I think they have on their board, but the big focus this free agency was re-signing all of these guys. And Jason Light, Jackie Davidson, the entire front office, John Spytek, they have done a great job. Mikey Kelly, anyone hear anything about Devin White? No. Regarding the Tampa Bay Buccaneers front, I have not heard an update. The last thing we heard was when Jason Light spoke to the media at the Combine, and he was saying how he has not really kept an open line of communication with Devin White. So I don't think there's going to be any developments between the Bucs and Devin White. I think we're just going to wait around to see what team he ultimately signs with. He is a free agent. The free agency negotiation period is officially open, so he can sign with any team he wants now. We'll just have to wait and see who it is. But that linebacker market, I think Patrick Queen just got a big-time deal today. Let me find the details on that Patrick Queen deal for you. That way we can talk about the linebacker market and really what's left out there for Devin White. Patrick Queen, former Ravens linebacker, 3-year, $41 million deal with the Pittsburgh Steelers. 3 years, $41 million. So you're looking at right around $13.5 million a year, and I'm sure that they're going to move some numbers around. It's not going to be his cap hit next season. But do you guys think Devin White's going to go get paid $14 million from a team? I mean, I don't think he was better than Patrick Queen last season. So ultimately, if I had to make a prediction on Devin White, no, I don't think there's going to be any developments between him and the Bucs. But if he does sign, I've got a feeling it's going to be a one-year deal. Maybe like $7 to $10 million range, and maybe that's me being generous, but that feels realistic. If one of the best linebackers in the league is getting paid $13.5, I think Devin White still has a little bit of notoriety behind that name. A lot of casual fans still have a lot of positive things to say about Devin White, so I still think there's somewhat of a market for a linebacker-needy team. But I think it's going to be a one-year deal for him. I don't expect him to find a multi-year deal after his performance last season. Thank you, Al Bundy in chat. $14 million per $41 million for Patrick Queen in Pittsburgh. Shout out to Al Bundy. Shout out to Willie Beeman, the moderator, holding it down. The rest of the mod squad hanging out with us. Friendly reminder, if you guys do want to call in, 305-224-1968, 871-2452-8660 is the meeting ID. That was a lot of numbers I threw at you, but you got to do what you got to do. Nobody on hold as of right now. So lines are open. I'd love to hear from somebody. No Evan Wanish this week, so again, just trying to get you the important news. Jack Mahogoff, Lavonte David, let it eat. Yes, sir. Richard T. from the West Coast hanging out with us. Malcolm Hawthorne. It's going to be a dogfight between the Bucs, Falcons, and the Saints. Yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting race this year for the NFC South. I think regardless of Dennis Allen and his situation in New Orleans, I don't think New Orleans is going to be the clear-cut second-best team in the South. And I say second-best team in the South because obviously I'm a little biased, and I think the Bucs are in a good position bringing back a lot of these guys. If the offense comes to fruition and they can hammer down a nice edge rusher or two, build up some depth on that interior offensive line, I do like where the Bucs are as far as competing within the division. We talked about the Falcons last night. I think we were live when the Kirk Cousins news broke, or maybe an hour or two afterwards. But, I think the Falcons, I don't know. It's a mixed bag with Kirk Cousins, in my personal opinion. He's 35 years old. I think he is one of the more productive quarterbacks in the NFL, but one playoff win in the last 12 seasons is important to mention. It's not like the Falcons have been a postseason team these last couple of years, but Kirk Cousins will definitely elevate Atlanta, and he's going to make them a better football team. But the question is going to be, one, how consistent can he be in that offense year one? And two, how far can they get if they make the postseason, whether it's as a wild card or they're competing for the NFC South? I do think they have a much better chance at competing in the NFC South. But the Panthers, man, oh my God, at no time was I scared of the Panthers. At no time was I concerned that they were going to be making a run for the division after hiring Dave Canales as their head coach. I still think the jury's out on Bryce Young. Obviously, everyone can tell you that, but I personally don't think he's going to end up working out for them. That's neither here nor there. But when you look at their team next season, I thought one of the biggest reasons the Panthers had any right of being a respectable team in the NFL is because of their defense. And what have they been doing? It's a fire sale up there in Carolina. They're letting everybody go. The Yetur Gross-Matos ends up going across the country. They let Brian Burns go. He ends up going to the Giants. They let Jeremy Chin go. I know Jeremy Chin didn't play last season, but he was a good young player. He's a guy that, I was hoping they would have in their system. I guess as a Bucs fan, I wasn't hoping they would have in their system, but he's a guy that as a Panthers fan, I would have wanted to stick around. I don't know what they're doing. I don't think we have any Panthers fans in chat. Yeah, Falcons also signed wide receiver Darnell Mooney today. They did pay him a lot of money, though. And I like Darnell Mooney. He did disappoint me a couple of years in Chicago. I thought, after that rookie season, he was going to break out a little bit more than he did. But I also can't blame him for the way that Chicago is able to bear things up every now and again between the quarterback situation and the way they ran their offense the last couple of seasons. So I can kind of understand it, but they gave him a lot of money. I hope he ends up panning out. You give him a legitimate offense, though, and a guy like Kirk Cousins who can definitely find his wide receivers. He could have a big-time fantasy season next year. I think Darnell Mooney is going to be a good fantasy guy in Atlanta. Let me see who else is in here. Mikey Kelly says he's going to get wasted Friday night. Well, it's only Wednesday, so it's Tuesday. We're not even a Wednesday yet. So I'm holding out with you. What's up, Rhett? When's the last time you ate Wendy's? I am ashamed to admit that I think it was like 2 weeks ago, actually. I went through the drive-thru and I asked if they still had the 4 for $4, and they said they don't, but they have the $5 biggie bags. So I got the $5 biggie bag with the chicken sandwich in it. It's not bad. It's not a 4 for $4. I like the value, but I'll take the $5 bag. Richard T. Newer players can learn a thing or two about performing at a high level and being loyal. Just a world-class guy on and off the field. Love Lavonte David. Absolutely. I agree with everything you said. And I said it earlier, I think a lot of the same things we said about Mike Evans could be said about Lavonte David. His importance to the franchise, his importance to, what the Buccaneers want from a franchise player, a model of consistency, a guy who just shows up and does his job among some of the best in the NFL. I'm eternally grateful for Lavonte David. Big fan of number 54. He'll be in the Ring of Honor someday. Richard T. Baker has more playoff wins than all other NFC South starting quarterbacks combined. That is a crazy stat. But it is true. Derek Carr, New Orleans. Jameis Winston, by the way, out of New Orleans, just signed with the Browns today to go be their backup. He said something along the lines of God called him up there to help a man like Deshaun Watson, whatever that may mean. Rhett, who will be the first free agent to be signed by the Bucs? Well, the Bucs have been signing a bunch of free agents, if we want to get technical here, but I'm not going to do that to you. That's not a very nice thing to do. We talked about it yesterday, and I still look at a couple of different positions. I wish I had more names for you. That's where Evan Wanish is kind of like the butter to my bread here, because he's got all the names that the Bucs are potentially going to have on their board. But I'm looking at positions, and I'm looking at, I think, a lot of depth moves. I don't know if we're going to get a splash signing. If we do get one, I think it's going to be at strong safety. I think it's going to be a safety. I don't think it's going to be one of the big name safeties that just got released, but I think it will be a name that gets people excited. And like my personal pick would be Jordan Whitehead, but what I personally want to happen is not always what happens. So I'm looking at the strong safety position. I'm looking for them to complement Antoine Winfield Jr. Ryan Neal just didn't work out, and I do not expect him to be back in Tampa Bay. But I'm also looking at depth in the trenches, specifically the offensive line. And I think that when you look at upgrading this Buccaneers offensive line, again, I don't think it's going to come from a big-name, flashy free agent center or a free agent guard. I think you're going to get a couple of depth guys. I think you're going to have some camp battles. And if they get... This might be... I don't know if this is a hot take or not, but in my opinion, if they get or they target a starter along that offensive line, that they want to play in 2024. Like if they have a guy that they want to start week 1 of 2024, I think it's going to happen in the draft. I think it'll happen in the first 3 rounds. The Bucs did just pick up that extra 3rd round pick for Carlton Davis, so that could be a new center, could be a new running back. We didn't talk about it because it happened about 20 minutes after the end of yesterday's show, but the Bucs also re-signed running back Chase Edmonds to a 1-year deal. So I think building depth is going to be their top priority as of right now. Oh, we got the dogs barking at each other. Hey, settle down, settle down, settle down. The dog outside got her going, so now she's going. Since we got this brand new dynamic microphone, you guys get to hear her going. All right, come here. I'm going to have to edit this out of the audio portion. Come here. You stop. Man, apartment complexes are so cool when you have a dog. Let me tell you. Appreciate your patience. Sorry about that. We were talking about free agents and honestly where the Bucs are going to be making their next moves a priority. And I think it's going to be that interior offensive line. I think you're going to be getting some depth signings there. And then in the secondary, I think the biggest signing they have left, would like it to be Jordan Whitehead, but realistically, I don't think they're going to have the ability to make that happen. Yeah, it's the wiener dogs, man. It's the dachshunds. They're barking. They love to bark. They love to bark. Yeah, she's a sweet girl. She just barks. Yeah, she just barks sometimes. All right, are you good? We're good. Mikey Kelly, if you knew we were drafting O-line within the first 3 rounds of the draft, center or guard, who would you want them to draft? I would want a center. I think we got to move on from Big Bob Hainsey playing center. I don't think he's the future. I think you've had 2 full seasons of him as your starter, and the Bucs know that they need to upgrade. He's not a people mover, and the Bucs do need some more people movers along that offensive line. You're on the Cannon Fire Podcast. Who's this?
Hey, how you doing, Brad? It's Fully Beaming. How are you?
Willie, what's going on, dude? Glad to hear from you.
Yes, absolutely, man. It's been a little while. I just wanted to just wanted to talk to you and see how you were doing, man. And I just wanted to let you know that I'm really happy about what Jason Light has been doing lately. Nothing really flashy, and I'm perfectly fine with that. But retaining what we have is what's really most important right now, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I think, every offseason, it's almost like a cycle at this point where we question everything the Bucs have in front of them regarding free agency and re-signing their own guys. We talk about just how stacked of a task it is for Jason Light and the rest of that front office. And every single year, we end up praising them and talking about throwing another boat parade because they seemingly pull it off every single year. Like this, I think this offseason, I think this free agency period, I said this at the start of the show, I think it's going to feel underwhelming to some people just because it's like the same old thing that we've had. But it's the standard now. Like our players are so good that we don't want them to go anywhere else. The Bucs have not been in a position to rely on outside big name free agents. The last time they did that, they did it because they had Tom Brady and because guys wanted to come here and win a championship. Before that, you were signing big names in free agency, hoping that they could turn your team around. But now the standard is what it is. You get an A-, A+ free agency just by re-signing your own free agents. Like the Bucs are in such great shape, and it's solely because of the position Jason Light has put this team in.
Yeah, and I just don't really understand why, he doesn't really get the national recognition that he deserves. I mean, just outside of the Super Bowl, that we won. And I just don't really think he gets enough credit for the transactions and the moves that he made, after Tom Brady's and Rob Gronkowski's exits.
Yeah, I agree. And, we've talked about it before. I like giving nicknames to certain things like this. I call it the Tampa effect, the Bucs effect. It's something that we've seen year after year. You talk about the legacy of guys like Lavonte David and Mike Evans. Those guys didn't get their roses until Tom Brady showed up. And it's unfortunate that it ends up happening that way, but I literally had something pop up on my feed today, and it was a post that I made years ago on Twitter. And it was a top 5 list of the top 10 linebackers of the 2010s. And I literally said Lavonte David is better than every player on this list, because here are the top 5 linebackers of the decade according to Sunday Night Football in 2019. Luke Kuechly, Von Miller, Chandler Jones, DeMarcus Ware, Clay Matthews. 1 out of 4 of those guys are still in the league. In Von Miller, who doesn't even really play the same position as Lavonte David. I can go on record in the year 2024, 5 years after this post was made, and say that Lavonte David is a better linebacker than Luke Kuechly. He's a better linebacker than Clay Matthews at this point in his career. Like, it took him 10 years to get the recognition because all these other guys had to retire and Tom Brady had to come to Tampa. And it's a damn shame, but 54 has been doing it for so long that people have overlooked him his entire career.
Absolutely. And I just think that, he just plays very well. You can tell he has a very high football IQ. He takes care of his body very well from what I can see. And the guy just doesn't have any chance of slowing down anytime soon. I'm just very impressed, with the work that he's done and put in, over the years, in Tampa Bay. I definitely think Lavonte is a sure thing, first ballot Hall of Famer for sure, in my book and in my opinion. And I mean, he's just an overall, quality leader, very great, locker room guy. And I think he'll definitely do a great job molding the next linebacker that comes after him for sure.
Absolutely. Willie, I appreciate hearing from you, man. Any final thoughts before I let you go?
No, I've said all that I need to say, but I just wanted to drop my opinion and just to say hello and check in.
We appreciate you, man.
Definitely appreciate you taking my call.
Absolutely. We appreciate you hanging out with us in chat, the moderator and the rest of the mod squad holding it down. Good to hear from you, my friend.
Absolutely. You too. You take care.
You too. Thank you. Realtor Dave Zussman in the YouTube chat says, I am not happy. If you will let Carlton Davis go in a position we were already not deep, why not sign an edge rusher, a strong safety, or a top offensive lineman? He got a 3rd-round pick, and we won't get crap with it. Don't say that. Don't say that. I'm going to shut that down right now when you say we're not going to get crap with a 3rd-round pick. Because I have faith in Jason Light. I know we've been doing a lot of Jason Light glazing on the show the last couple of days. But I have faith that he's going to get good value for whoever he picks up in that 3rd round. Or he trades it away and he gets more value in other rounds. I don't really know what the plan is with that 3rd round pick, but there's a lot of weight behind a Jason Light 3rd round pick. I think the Bucs hold more weight with a 3rd round pick than a lot of other franchises do because of the success that Light has had in the mid rounds. We got another caller here. Cannon Fire Podcast, what's your name?
Hey, my name's Michael.
Mike, what's up, man?
Hey, what's going on, brother, man? I'm calling from Savannah, Georgia. I'm probably the biggest Bucs fan here in Savannah, man. How's it going with you?
Enemy territory. I'm glad to hear you're doing okay. I'm doing all right. I'm excited. It's been a busy week so far for the Bucs, which I like because some years It seems like they take until April to make these moves happen. But first week of free agency, they're checking all the boxes this year.
Right. And I just wanted to call in real quick, man, and just say that, like, I'm overexcited with the position that Jason Light got us in right now. But, like, I think I would sleep a whole lot better if, like, I wake up tomorrow or in the next couple of hours, like, I hear some news that we address the guard position and we address the edge position. I know we got Chase Young out there. We got Joey Bosa is up for trade. I'm hearing. I think it's some good edge rusher depth out there, that I think we should take advantage of.
Yeah, I agree. I think, names like Bosa and some of the other premier edge rushers, as much as I would love to go get a Chase Young, I like the upside with a player like that, but it's just the price tag. And, I think Chase Young is going to be an interesting case because when you look at the split with what happened last year when him and Montez Sweat got dealt the same time out of Washington. Sweat gets a multi-year deal with Chicago because he was such a stud. And maybe it's just because of how stacked that San Francisco defensive line was, but there wasn't a lot of chatter about Chase Young after he played the rest of the season over there. Maybe it just leads to some people overlooking him. Maybe he gets another shot on another team and he kind of has a resurgence, but I don't know. A lot of people feel overwhelmingly disappointed with him. But I think value in the point that you brought up is going to be important because I don't think it's going to be a big sexy name. I think the Bucs are going to sign somebody and some people are going to be like, who the hell did they just sign? Because they're looking for value. But Jason Licht's had a pretty good scope of, signing a value player who has a high ceiling, a guy that in best case scenario, a guy that can potentially become a Shaq Barrett. You sign him for peanuts and he gets you almost 20 sacks. So that's the outlier. That's the thing that very rarely happens. But I think value for an edge rusher, I like them targeting an edge rusher for sure because they need some help, man. Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, I don't think he's that guy.
Yeah, he's definitely not that guy. Yaya Diaby is definitely that guy. But that's kind of why exactly what you were saying about Chase and his kind of overshadowed productivity, if you want to say that much. Thinking his value should be kind of low. I think he's going to have to settle for a lot less money in free agency than he want to. So I think, it's probably not a bad idea to give him a look. But I'm in agreement with you definitely. The cap room is not formidable for us to go out and try to get this big, huge talent. But that's two of my major concerns: guard and edge rush. I'm pretty sure we'll get a nice corner and a nice center out of the draft, I'm hoping. But, yeah, I'm definitely concerned about guard and edge rush.
I hear you, man. We'll talk a little bit more about the guard situation here before we wrap things up. But, Michael, any final thoughts before I let you go, my friend?
Nope, babe. Just go Bucs. Fire the cannon.
Go Bucs. Fire the cannons. Appreciate hearing from you, friend. Have a good rest of your day. Thank you to Michael. Savannah, Georgia, behind enemy lines. I'm sure he's heard just a ridiculous amount of Falcons news this week. Talking about the guard situation, though, I wanted to talk about one specific player, and I brought this up before I took, I think, Willie's call. I never got to finish my point. Robert Hainsey. He's not going to be the center of the future. We know that. But he's been a starter on this offensive line for 2 full seasons. And I don't hate him at guard. I think, consistency is going to be where you learn how valuable he is. We all remember how terrible of a rookie season Luke Gedeke had at the guard position. You switch him over to right tackle, he's one of the better right tackles in the NFL. I'm not going to say top 5, but he had head and shoulders a better second season at right tackle than he did at guard. So I think Robert Hainsey could potentially be a guy that you talk about being in the mix for that guard job later on in camp. We got a call, and I think I recognize the number, if I'm not mistaken. Is this my Uber Eats order?
Yep, I'm here with your Domino's. Where are you?
What's up, buddy? How you doing? Ladies and gentlemen, the Philly Bucs fan himself, Evan Wanish, calling in.
How you doing? Yeah, obviously some big news. Expected news, right? But still big news, and now the Buccaneers really, I got most of the heavy lifting of this all season, as far as free agency and re-signings go, like it's pretty much done now. Like obviously they still have needs, right? But as far as bringing guys back and priorities, basically they brought back everybody that they really couldn't afford to lose, right? And I think that's important. And we're not even technically at the start of free agency yet, and they're also a hot start.
Yeah, so we were just talking about, what some of their priorities are going to be now that they've essentially re-signed all of their guys. Like, you still have a couple of names out there, but when we talk about the value that this free agency is going to be about, Jason Licht looking for those value signings, not expecting the Bucs to get any big sexy names in free agency. What positions do you think could be in play here? What positions do you think they could make a priority? I have said specifically strong safety and getting some depth along that interior offensive line. I think those are the two big outside signings you're going to get. And by big, I mean just like depth. We talk about value again and again. But do you see any names in particular and any positions in particular? Edge rusher also in there as well, but also stuff they could do in the draft.
Yeah, the tough thing about edge rusher now is like the position is really like dried up, and like the one that intrigued me, and actually the contract that he got really signaled that like he just wanted to be back where he was Josh Uche from the Patriots. Signed a deal, I believe it's 3.1 year, $3.5 million that can go up to like 8. Like that would have been something I would have been heavily interested in, but kind of sounds like Uche was a guy who wanted to return to New England no matter what. Not much you can do there. But as far as names go, I do agree with the positions you mentioned. I agree with the interior offensive line. I agree with strong safety. I would still expect them to add, pieces there. As far as the interior, I think you look at Brian Allen. We talked about him, I believe, after he was released by the Rams, worked with Liam Cohen for a little bit. I could see a guy like Brian Allen being a fit, and he wouldn't probably cost that much. He'd be a guy who I believe, obviously mostly played center, but I also think can definitely help you out in other areas along the offensive line. But I'd keep an eye on him. Dalton Reiser's another guy who could maybe fill in at that guard spot, depending on how much money he makes. A bigger one, I think Kevin Zeitler's still out there. He might be a little bit costly, but if the Bucs want to shore up that left guard spot, Zeitler's not really a center, but if they wanted to shore up that left guard spot, Zeitler could be a guy. And a strong safety, obviously going to mention Jordan Whitehead. I'm not 100% sure the Bucs are interested in Jordan Whitehead, but I personally, based on the contract that he received today, I would have been interested in a guy like Jeremy Chin. But didn't happen. But I mean, you got Jordan Whitehead still out there. Cameron Curl from Washington is still available. You have a couple other. Jaron Kearse from Dallas is still available. You got a couple other guys there. Julian Blackman from the Colts is still available. So there's a couple of names, and there's obviously Justin Simmons still available. I would say he's pretty unlikely because I still think he's going to get a pretty big deal. But there is a couple of names out there for the Bucs still that haven't signed yet. And like after this first wave goes, that's when I think you're going to see the Bucs pounce. Right? They're going to look for that second and third wave guys, because look, they're just like, and I understand fan frustration and stuff, I get it, but you're just not going to be able to pay some of these prices for these guys. So there's a few things that I think they can do, and they're going to be able to create more cap space as well. Obviously, not bringing back Russell Gage freed up some cap room. They're still going to be able to work on extensions for Tristan Wirfs and Antoine Poe Jr. Both are going to free up cap space, much needed cap space.
Yeah.
And then obviously the trade of Carlton Davis frees up cap space. And then, maybe like the corner market really hasn't been hit hard in free agency. So like, would it shock me if the Bucs wanted to go out, maybe sign a veteran for depth there, just to not maybe pigeonhole yourself in the draft, right? Where like you kind of need to draft one, even though you acquired an extra day 2 pick, that you kind of need to draft one. So one name I'm going to throw out, and you're not going to like it, but and most fans here won't like it, but if they wanted to make a splash, right? If they wanted to make a splash at a position of need, a guy like Chauncey Gardner-Johnson is still available.
No.
If they wanted to,
Don't say that.
I'm not saying they will.
I'm
not. That's not sourced or anything. I'm not. I'm not a report. I'm just saying he's still available. And out of the safeties, he's probably going to get the most money out of the remaining safeties, I would guess. But I don't necessarily think it's likely because of the money he's going to get. But just a name, like I said, I don't really have a list of corners, but, I wouldn't be shocked if after the Davis trade, they look to add somebody there just to, like I said, not go into the draft with Zion McCollum as cornerback too.
Yeah, well, just a name, that guy is a perennial loser, and I don't want him anywhere near this football team. So let's just leave it. Let's just leave it at just a name. But let me ask you another question. Focusing back on that interior offensive line, talk to me about Big Bob Hainsey. We were talking about how more than likely he isn't going to be your starting center. If I had to guess, I think the Bucs are going to want to make a move at center, whether it's through the draft or through free agency. But this guy's been a starter for the last 2 seasons. He hasn't missed much time. He's been fairly consistent. Now, again, you need a little bit more from the center position, which is why I think the Bucs are expected to move him around. But where does this leave him? Is he going to be a guy that is, mixing it up in the guard battles come training camp? Is he going to be a guy that just goes back to the depths of being a second and third stringer, kind of like he was during his early time in the league? Like, what do you see happening with Robert Hainsey? And do you think the Bucs address the center position either through free agency or through the draft? Which do you think is more likely?
Yeah, I mean, well, for one, I do think they address it. I do think they address it. Like I mentioned, Brian Allen played a little bit of guard, I believe, but he's mostly a center. So if they were to sign him, I think he'd be a leader in the clubhouse to start. Maybe that means they draft the left guard. And I mean, the good thing about Hainsey is, he's versatile. He can play guard, he can play center. So, I would probably at this rate, I think I'd probably say the draft, just because it actually is a pretty deep center draft. You have obviously Jackson Powers Johnson from Oregon. You have Graham Barton, who is a tackle at Duke, but a lot of people think he's going to switch inside. And a lot of people think, look, like he can play any position. Cedric Van Pran, Zach Frazier. You have a lot of guys that could potentially play center. So if they were to address that and look to replace Hainsey there, I would assume it's probably through the draft, but wouldn't shock me, if they signed a guy like Brian Allen. Like I said, probably a guy that comes on a cheaper 1-year deal and has familiarity with the offensive coordinator.
Let me ask you one more question before I let you go here and we wrap this thing up. This has to do with the Carlton Davis trade. Where do the Bucs find themselves as far as Zion McCollum being cornerback 2? Because I don't have the best feeling in the world. Feels like a very high-risk, high-reward kind of move. And I know we talked a lot about the positive development that Zion McCollum had last season, but there were still a couple of weeks where he was the guy in that secondary getting picked on. So I don't think targeting a corner through free agency is going to be likely. I still think the most likely course is exactly what we've talked about, re-signing their guys and looking for good value at other positions of need. So if they get a guy at corner in free agency, I wouldn't expect him to be your cornerback 2, but do you think it changes their plans for the draft, specifically first, second, third round? Do you think they could potentially get aggressive in free agency and try and go after a corner who can step up and complement Jamel Dean? I don't think that's as high of a priority as something like an edge rusher. I think the sexier name and more effort needs to be put into the line of scrimmage. But what are their plans at corner? Do you think it has changed what they may potentially do here in April after the Davis trade?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, they really do like Zion McCollum. They think he made great strides, and they think he's one of the most improved players on the team. So they are high on him. That being said, I think in an ideal world, you probably have somebody else be your cornerback too. And hey, if Zion McCollum makes another leap in year 3, like, you'll get a pretty good starter, And then let's say you end up signing a guy in free agency to probably a 1-year deal. Let's say it's a veteran, maybe like I know Stephon Gilmore is still out there. I'm not reporting that or anything. They have interest, but I know he's still out there. And then perhaps, if McCollum makes another leap, you just literally move on from Gilmore after a year, and there you go. But I'm not expecting them to go crazy. Just like you said, I think the more likely path is the draft. I don't know if that's round 1 though, because I just think there's going to be some other positions, the interior offensive line, pass rush. I just think there's going to be some other positions there that might be a higher priority for them in round 1. So it is a deep corner draft. There is a lot of talent there, and I think you could get a quality guy on day 2, especially now that they've added an extra pick there.
Yeah. All right. I know I said the last one was the last question, But one more question, talking about the corner situation. I think only one cornerback Jason Light has ever drafted in the first round was 2016 with Vernon Hargraves III.
Not great.
Yeah, not the best track record doing that, so that's why he stayed away. But we've also talked about his recent success picking in these middle rounds. A lot of good day 2 picks for Jason Light.
Uh-huh.
When you look at this extra third round pick the Bucs have, is this something that they can ultimately just trade away and try and move around, get some more draft capital with, or do you think there is some extra weight with a third round pick considering the success that Light has had in these second, third, fourth rounds these last couple of seasons?
Yeah, I mean, I do think they're going to look to keep it. But at the same time, though, it gives you extra ammo. If you want to move up, maybe even in the first round, right? If there's somebody there that you're eyeing and you want to move up into, from 26 for somebody, you have a little bit extra ammo there. And
by the way, not to interrupt you, I do apologize, but just to squash your point earlier about Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, he did just sign a 3-year deal worth $33 million of max value with the Philadelphia Eagles. So we do not have to worry about that bum landing in Tampa.
Yeah, so I do think that, I think there's a lot of possibilities. The most likely thing is that they're going to keep it. You mentioned about the middle rounds and stuff, the day 2, early day 3. Jason Light's been pretty good at drafting secondary in that too. Jamel Dean, second round pick, Carlton Davis, second round pick, Mike Edwards, a third round pick, Jordan Whitehead, a fourth round pick. So, he's had some success drafting specifically secondary players in those middle rounds. So, I definitely think that it's a possibility, and that's why I do think that it's likely they probably keep it. And look, Jason Light, he loves the draft, but at the same time, if something comes up, I don't think he's going to be hesitant to pull the trigger or potentially move up, and this just gives them a little bit more flexibility to do that.
Evan Wanish, my co-host here on the Cannon Fire podcast. The Philly Bucs fan is what we call him around here. You can check out his written work at bucksnation.com. You can follow him on Instagram at Bucs_daily. Find him on Twitter at EvanNFL. Evan, I appreciate you calling in. Good to hear from you, buddy.
Yep, sounds good. Thanks.
Talk to you soon. I love that guy. But that, ladies and gentlemen, is about all we have time for, and that's going to do it for this week's episode, or today's episode of the Cannon Fire podcast. I think the third or fourth one this week. It has been a busy week. Of course, we will keep you updated. Any breaking news, find us on YouTube or on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. All of those are Cannon Fire Podcast. Best place to go for updates on the show. And, of course, Tampa Bay Buccaneer news as it happens. Thank you to everybody in the live chat hanging out with us. The moderator, Willie Beeman, holding it down. Brent O'Neill, Realtor Dave Zussman, Mikey Kelly, Richard T. over there on the West Coast, Al Bundy. Anybody else that I may have missed, we appreciate your support. And before I go, we're going to open probably the next episode with this acknowledgement, but I literally just now remembered and I need to say something. I want to say thank you to the audience, to everybody watching and or listening, because chances are you might be subscribed. I want to thank everybody for not only 5,000 subscribers on the YouTube channel here for the Cannon Fire podcast, which is just insane. I want to thank you guys for 5,000 subs, but I also want to thank you for over 400 episodes of the Cannon Fire podcast. It's crazy because now that we are in the calendar year of 2024, we started what was the initial version of the Cannon Fire podcast all the way back in 2016 was when the YouTube channel was published. 8 years ago, March 9th, 2016 was when we made this channel. And 8 years later, we've got 5,000 subscribers and over 400 episodes to show for all of the hard work that we've put in. And a lot of you guys have been there with us every single step of the way. And we appreciate it. We're just a couple of guys that enjoy talking about Bucs football. We're a couple of fans at the end of the day. We've never tried to pretend to be something we're not, but we enjoy connecting with our audience. We enjoy connecting with fellow Bucs fans. And maybe I'm a little bit biased, but we got some of the coolest listeners, I think, in the Buccaneers podcast sphere. So I appreciate your guys. Appreciate your patronage. Appreciate you hanging out with us, rocking with us, talking ball with us. Anybody who called in, Appreciate you guys. Shout out to Michael and Willie Beeman calling in today. And, of course, the Philly Bucs fan. Last but not least, you can find myself, Instagram and Twitter at Reticus, RHETTAKUS. If you follow me, I will follow you back. But that's the show. We will talk to you soon with some more Buccaneer breaking news. I'm your host, Rhett Matthews, signing off for my co-host, Evan Wanish, who will be back again soon. We'll talk to you in the next one. Until then, and as always, thank you for listening, and go Bucs.